Alright, I wanted to really briefly talk to you guys about sort of two different structures you might have for your skeleton depending on your rig design. I realize for my students this time it's a little bit late for that, for which I do apologize. So what we have here is, it's basically talking about the positioning of the root, is what I did for my skeleton, where I have the root in the center of this ball joint here. So if I go ahead and I like move the pelvis, you can see it's kind of rotating around this ball joint. So this, just sort of because of where everything is rotating from, ends up being basically like the center of my body for this particular character. I could have done some weird stuff and like, put the root down here in the pelvis, because if you're doing a humanoid character, that's usually where it is in the pelvis. I mean, think of, if you move your hips somewhere, it's going to take your whole upper body with it and affect your whole lower body sort of from there. Whereas, you can move your chest and like the lower part of your body sort of stays the way it is. I don't know if that description makes any sense, but usually for a humanoid character, you'll put the root joint somewhere in the pelvis. The only reason I didn't for this one is, again, because of how I set up this particular rig with this ginormous ball joint in the center. If you have something like this for your robot or your character, where you have, something, this little area in here is supposed to be like a soft bound spine. If you have something like this, you can do a more traditional setup with the joints where you can see I have like the root here, right down in this sort of pelvis, and then I am able to, again, rotate my pelvis and rotate my spine from there. So when you're thinking about setting up where the root goes, you want to kind of, or like I usually think about it as, there's a root and then there's two joints that are sort of sitting directly on top of the root. One that controls the pelvis or lower body, and one that controls the spine. So you want to think about, if I have to select the upper part of the body, where do I want that? So in this case, again, I usually kind of like the spine being in one area. If, for example, your root was in the chest, that would basically mean that anytime you move the pelvis, it's going to take not only this stuff down here, but also the lower part of the spine. So anytime you were moving your character, your whole spine would end up wiggling, which is not, it's certainly workable. It's not necessarily a wrong way to rig. I just think it makes animating harder for humanoid characters. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Hopefully it sort of does, but again, just sort of think of, if you have to take, like, where do you want your character split? What qualifies as the upper part of the body and what qualifies as the lower part of the body? And sort of put your root joint where you want that. I mean, I just watched a King of the Hill episode the other day where they're talking about, like, fighting below the belt. So you can also kind of think of that as, like, wherever you'd put a belt on yourself is kind of like, or like wherever you'd wear on your body where like clothes would be, lower body clothes, you would put the root kind of between there, and like the upper body clothes like shirts and stuff like that. So I don't know. Hopefully that sort of makes sense. I'm going to use this horrid little rig and do like a quickie little video on binding smooth skins, but yeah.